Hello everyone, Richard Miller from Australia. It's just Australia, but it's also fine del mondo. So that means it's like the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Well, that's one interpretation. And so we're on this tour that we're checking out everybody that we can find and everyone that wants to talk to us. And actually everybody wants to talk to you. So that we're stacking them up, We're stacking them up high and deep. And so your ears are drawing us. They've always drawn me. And now we'll see how great your ears are, Maybe we'll get the president or something here, or prime minister. Just keep going until they say enough is enough. And we don't even know what we're talking about, but it's still me. So don't worry about that, If there's a time when I disappear, I'll try to let you know. And so anyhow, that's enough of that. So just help me welcome Julia Kalytis.
Hi.
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 Thank you for coming.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Yeah.
What can I do for you? What can I tell you?
Okay, well, I haven't been all around Australia, and I imagine it's all pretty varied and pretty fabulous in its own way. But this particular section is it's like a mystery, It should be the Enchanted Forest or something like that. And the people that gather around here are mystery school or mystery, they're like, seems like everyone is so special because I haven't.
The land is really magical. That's why the land in this area, apart from its sacredness in terms of traditional Aboriginal perspectives, but it has just a magic and it sings. There are days when it just sings. And so I'm Tasmanian and I've lived in Europe for lots of years, but I end up here because I'm drawn, as a lot of people are being increasingly drawn, to the place that has the energy, which is the energy that we need to do the work that is there for us to do in this next stage. So we're here.
So that's interesting because I think the Aborigines use the word sing. They're going to sing you here and they sing you there. And so you're saying the land sings. And even if we don't hear the tune, something about us hears it really loud and clear.
Well, it's like hot spots, and a number of I run a clinic, and so I have a lot of clients, and one of the things that contributes to the imbalance that those people might experience is that they don't choose the places that make them happy, unreasonably happy. Just as their feet are on the ground and they know that they're in the place that they need to be. Very often they're in the place that they don't need to be, but a lot of things get in the way of knowing that. So just being in the environment that is energetically most conducive to the expression of who you are and what your purpose is already an enormous clarity. A great vision and a big step ahead.
So are your clients from this area? You would think that if it's so great, maybe they'd all be healed in this area. They'd have to be imported in, right? And there's no sickness here, right?
You still have to do the work. You still have to do the work. I have clients at a physical level, concrete physical level. I have clients who have to be from this area because I'm a practicing shiatsu therapist. It's one of the things that I do. And that means that you have to have your hands physically on somebody's body. So yes, there's a kind of core of people who are here, but often from a lot of other different places who've gathered here for their own healing purposes. But then I have clients as well where they don't need to be anywhere near me. I do a lot of vibrational work. I do a lot of work with the Australian bush flower essences, a lot of work. And so those remedies, they might go to Europe, as they often do. They might go to the United States. I have clients in Europe because I spend time in Italy every year, several times a year. Hey, what a life! But we make it.
I know that routine.
We make it. We create it. We are dynamic agents in the creation of our lives every single day, and we can have what we want, not even what we need. To think about things in terms of what we need is a little bit weaker than thinking about what do I really want, with the best intentions, and as part of a life of service, what do I want? What needs to be in place for me to be able to do that job? And sky's the limit, really is.
So you say, what do we need? We need the land, right? Or we need to be in touch with the land, or the land's in touch with us, or somehow we're a part of the land and we don't know it. And so then in the States, I don't know. I mean, we have Native Americans that are in touch with the land. Most of us are probably not in touch with the land. We're all experimenting with being disconnected with the land, because we're saying, okay, we were born here, but now we want to get out of this place. Even the walls are haunting us, right? And we want to get out of here and go somewhere else. And then we go somewhere else. Maybe it's a beautiful place, but it's fast-paced. And we're saying, "Oof!" After so many years there, and real estate's so expensive, and paying all the bills, and especially if you're in LA or something like that, or in some of
or Sydney. It's just similar. Sydney's one of the most expensive cities in the world.
Yeah. But anyhow, then I'm kind of an abstract guy in a way. So then I start thinking, oh, I could be a world citizen, right? I could be without any land, and then I could just be free anyhow, right? And then just to experiment with that. I even did one time, I said I could love any woman, that didn't get me very many points.
I imagine not.
But I didn't say it out loud, I had this idea, right?
You acted it out loud by the sound of things, and that's what didn't get you the points.
Yeah. So then I thought I could be just, this abstract thing of a man that really is just turned on all the time, not turned on.
Do you know, I think a man's a really practical thing. I don't think a man is an abstract concept. I think a man thinks and does in the same way as a woman thinks and does, and that we are here acting in the most practical terms because we live in these vehicles. And although we might have all these other layers and levels that are part of us, it's our nature to act out of these vehicles. So, and that's why it's really important to respect them and to take care of them. And so you can be comfortable anywhere if you've maintained some sort of comfort in your core. Mm-hmm. But that to me is part more of recognizing the impermanence of things, that the structures that we create are just that, they're structures around us.
Well, you spotted me, of course, because why was I running an experiment to be abstract? Because I was really somehow uncomfortable with I wasn't practical enough or something, but I am very practical. But also I'm able to tear things down and start over again and reconstruct myself. I've done that many times, and my abstract part says, hey, do it every day, right? And I'm kind of doing it here in Australia, because week by week I don't know where I'll be or who I'll speak with, or and that's not deficiency. That's an absolute plus.
Well, that's
it's called spontaneity, right?
Well, it's opening the doors and windows, having a very specific purpose that at a deep level, but opening the doors and windows to the world and saying, what have you got for me?
I never quite phrase it that way, but I said, I'm here.
By the open window. And so, but again, you're practical, you're scheduling things, you're meeting people, you're making contact, you're doing all of that, but without the lack of meaning that comes from the lack of connection. And because you've come to this place, you've been drawn to this place, you've heard the call of the wild, you're here. So, but I think for a lot of people, they get caught in repeating patterns that then mean that they don't engage with any freshness with what comes into their life day by day. And then they begin to think that those repeating patterns are who they are and what is in store for them and all that they can hope for.
All right. Well, let's just go back and set some foundation, because you said two great things, lack of meaning and lack of connection. you know. And
Yeah.
so, what is a meaning, you know, right? What is a meaning? To touch other people seems to be a meaning for me, and then this vehicle that I have is
Meaning is
a way to do
connection.
it.
They're actually the same thing, I think. Meaning is connection, so that if we have a conversation and we connect, we're generating meaning. If I have a session with a client and I connect, if I see them connect with some deeper purpose for them, some rebalancing occurs. They connect with an equilibrium that they've been denying themselves. All of that connection is the meaning. It's the network. It's the grid. It's there just to be plugged into.
So then the meaning is kind of the result, but the connection is kind of the methodology. In other words, just go out and connect, right? You can't really go out and be meaningful. You connect, you know.
No, you don't. You
and
don't
then
have
connection
to go out.
comes out of that,
Yeah,
right?
You don't have to go out to be meaningful. You can sit at home and be entirely meaningful. It's I think it's purpose. I think it's purpose. I think it's clarity. I think it's focus. I think it's integrity. I think it's helping.
Focus isn't always a good thing, because a lot of times we're focused on our trauma and our imagined suffering.
Yeah, but you put it together with clarity. Focus and clarity together is the basis of manifesting in the world. Now, you can choose to manifest in a positive way or in a negative way, but you need...
It doesn't always seem so easy, because like people that are stuck in the negative want to get out, but they're not getting out. So
No, that's right.
So it's not that easy, right?
Do you know, it's actually very simple, but we wrestle the crocodile for as long as we want to. You know, and it is so easy to say that it's easy, but it depends how you're framing your world. And I speak, I guess, as a therapist now as well. If you're framing your world as a world of loss or a world of difficulty or a world of obstacle, well, of course it's going to be hard to move forward. How are you going to
They
do
say
that?
it's simple but not easy, right? So that essentially it's simple, but somehow you get stuck in a...
But if you use the concept of degree of difficulty as the yardstick for how long it's going to take you to get unstuck, even that needs to be thought about. That needs to be rethought.
Yeah, so let go
Richard.
just takes a second, right? Just let go of it, right?
It takes no time at all. It takes no time at all. But for most of us, because we are in these physical bodies, working with this dense concrete physical dimension of our lives, but also having access to all of these other much finer vibrational levels of our lives and our emotions and, you know, our deeper knowing, we get confused and we don't open the channels so that we can bring what we deeply truly know into these dense concrete physical problems that have to be resolved, you know, at a very practical level.
You know, again, I think it's focus, because like you say, we have these channels, or we have these finer vibrations or finer realities are at our fingertips, but somehow we ignore the subtleties of life, because they're just kind of like, feel like they're too mundane, and we would rather have some mental decoration around everything. And well, that's another thing of meaning, you know. If our just definition of meaning is a tag on it, you know, some kind of a label.
Well, absolutely, and I see that a lot. I think that we, you know, have absorbed through our skin bigger values from the culture that say life is only meaningful if you can demonstrate to the world that you have achieved this or that you have this. You know, and a lot of that's changed enormously since the Industrial Revolution. It's about what you can make, what you can accumulate, how powerful you can be outside of yourself. And I think because, gosh, we're going to go into a deep feminist meta-analysis here. But I think that paradigm patently is creaking and groaning. What we are able to achieve using only these more dense, concrete, physical aspects, what we're able to create in the world and stand and look at, that is a dense, a heavy vibrational effect. That's absolutely not enough, because we came into these bodies and we're going to leave these bodies and we're going to go round again and again, if that's what we believe. And we're only just sort of travellers coming through. And so it can't be all there is. It can't be what ultimately sustains us, because it's transient.
Well, one thing, that comes to my mind is like, okay, these gross or external meanings are all comparative and relative, because it's external, we can see it in others. And maybe the more feminist ones that might be more internal, like how your degree of love and how much you really feel at one with your family and so on, we can't see those. And so then we can't really try to emulate those. Someone can tell us about it and we can, but it's not so readily obvious. We have to just go into the experiment ourselves and feel it ourselves.
Well, it requires feeling. You've just said it. It actually requires feeling. So that means accessing your emotional body. And it's part of the intellectual and the cultural climate that we find ourselves in, that we are taught to think our way through things, and that somehow at the end of a thinking process, we're going to come up with a solution. And whilst that's appropriate for certain problems, it's really not appropriate for many other problems. It's certainly not appropriate for a lot of the problems that I see in the clinic, in the lives of the clients that I have.
Yeah, it totally doesn't work. In fact, it's kind of creating the problem itself, somehow like turning your face away from what you feel and what you're trying to escape. And it's so easy to turn away with put a focus on a concept, and it's so easy.
Well, it creates a repetition of patterns. So say just a pattern like the pattern of worry. Many people come to a therapist and they're locked in patterns of worry. And patterns of worry are about projecting ahead into a future that doesn't exist yet, hasn't happened yet. You can't solve the problem in the future. And much of the framing that people use to project ahead with the pattern of worry has been used from pain that's been frozen behind them in the past, which they can't do anything about either. They can't revisit that past. They can certainly visit themselves as they are now in the present and make the changes and loosen the burdens and so on and do the reframing. But we are only powerful in the present. That is the only time we can achieve anything, in this moment that we're just sitting here, or moving there, or engaging with that person, or that concept, or that practice. So when people spend time in the future and in the past, they rob themselves of all of the energy they have to manifest their lives, to dynamically create their lives. And it's the same with the pattern of striving that I see, probably the most common pattern that I see in the clinic as a shiatsu therapist. So I'm using traditional Chinese medicine understandings as my template, to make the analysis. But is the stress pattern, and it's that pattern of striving, not being able to stop, not being able to rest, not being able to be quiet, not being able to reflect, not being able to create space, not being able to give attention to, not being able to deeply nourish, not being able to stop worrying, not being able to stop thinking or planning or wishing or hoping, all of those things which take us out of the moment we have to cure ourselves, to rebalance.
I bet you a lot of people, what's coming to me is a lot of people probably come to the clinic because of stress, and they're either in worry or striving, but they never ever think of like giving up worry or striving, because that's the way the world works for them.
But they are distressed.
But they know this what it's
They are
causing, but they don't know
distressed.
what's causing it. They just know that they're distressed.
Well, that's the little use that
And
therapists...
you help me so I can worry better or strive
No,
more,
no.
right? You know,
Huh.
so I can heal this thing so it'll strive better, right? And you say, wait a minute.
That is the little use that therapists can be. They can help to join the dots. They can create the quiet moment. Now, that might be a treatment for an hour and 10 minutes, where that person is there even for a half-realised purpose on their part. They are moving from distress. They may be moving from body distress, bodily pain. They may have, physical problems manifesting at the physical level. But the imprints of those problems, which ultimately manifest in the physical, will be seen in their emotional body, in their mental body, in their belief systems, in what they've inherited in terms of values and so on, and the way they're trying to move through the world with all of those things working in them and on them. And people come not knowing what's there for them, but knowing that they can't continue to be how they are, but not even knowing that with any clarity, just being distressed. Right. Then they appear
I can see that.
Yeah, then they appear in the doorway, and that is wonderful. I had one man, there was a client, and he said, am I going to make it? He's lying on a mat on the floor. Am I going to make it? And I go, you're the one on the mat. There is only one mat in this practice and only one man on the mat. You've already made it. Don't worry. The rest is just process. You are here asking the question. That's just a bubble of anxiety. That's fine. The fact that you've entered the door and you're lying on the mat, you are already there. The rest is just knowing that with absolute clarity and calmness.
So that people come in the door and they want you to apply some of your magic touch, and then they want to leave healed, right? But it's never going to work that way. Mm. They have to go out and they have to realize that this life is not all that interesting the way I framed it. And then they have to kind of, in a way, recreate it, or allow it to deconstruct and reconstruct. Whether it has to go 1, 2 like that time, or whether it can kind of like transfer slowly, kind of be reconstructed while some of it's getting loose. But somehow they're going to have to have a realization that this is not the way to live a life. And what you apply to the solace that they get from your touch is going to last a certain amount of time and then go away. And then they're going to say, well, that's like a taste, right? Yep. It's a taste of a possibility, but somehow they have to create that possibility or have a willingness to.
Well, first thing is, it's good that they've come through the door. They have unrealistic expectations and not necessarily a great deal of clarity about why they're there or what is there for them now that they have arrived. My aim in the first shiatsu session is that they leave optimistic and that they leave with an understanding that optimism is based on, and that understanding is that there is a road that they can take, there is a pathway that they can tread, which will move them towards balance and harmony and clarity and vision and patience and perspective, equilibrium. Okay, they can't know what that road contains. If you leave here where we are today and do an overland trip to London through Afghanistan, India, you can't know in advance what every step of that journey is going to contain. There's no way, but you can know that there is a journey available to you. And then all the points of revelation deliver the information about what each step contains. And then that's when people get realistic. They go, okay, there is some help here. But what they're actually doing is they are laying down new patterns. New physical patterns, so we work with breathing, we work with letting go, we work with body awareness. New emotional patterns, so we work with awareness of the worry loop, of being frozen in grief, of spending time outside of the present. We work with mental belief systems, we work with connection to spirit. All of those things all collapse in together, and they they make that connection that we were talking about earlier possible, which is where the meaning is derived. And to me, the image that I get of that is just people come through the door of the clinic and it's like they have unplugged themselves from the grid, and they've got the little plug in their hand, and that where's the grid? And if you look at it as a sort of car analogy, it's the alternator's not recharging, the alternator's not generating power. They are now on their battery, and batteries run down. If you don't recharge them in these fundamental ways, eventually you will have a flat battery. You'll be in deficit in that way. And so a lot of people come and they're very deeply exhausted. And so, and they
might be scared too, because they're starting to realize, hey, I'm only running on battery.
Well, in fact, often they don't realize that. They just know that they can't go on, but they don't know how not to go on. So what's happened is they've converted from deep physical vitality, which is what comes to you when you plug into that grid, and that grid is everything, absolutely everything, and energy moves in continuation. So when somehow, and it might be through emotional closure, it might be through being frozen in grief patterns, it might be through just sheer repetition of very fatiguing processes in your life, you deprive yourself of access to that grid and that energy that's moving in that much bigger grid. Then you deprive yourself of vitality, but you deprive yourself of joy, because it's all energy. It's all moving energy. When I feel something deeply, that's just energy moving. When I believe something and translate that into a practice in my life, that's energy moving, being made manifest. So we're all in the process of becoming, and all in the process of being made manifest as part of this amazing kind of soup that we all move through. And if you think that you're alone with your dwindling battery and your little plug, and where's the power point, and what the point, where did the grid go, then of course you're going to feel desperate at a deep level. You're going to feel sick, you're going to feel worried, you're going to feel unhappy, of course.
You mentioned so many things that they can't come just through a shiatsu session. You must do a lot of talking, right?
Absolutely.
And a lot of verbal transmission.
Absolutely. And some
coaching, what would you call it? Some kind of just life coaching?
It's counselling, really. It's listening, it's creating some people come and they don't have the physical treatment. Some people have come and just talked. And eventually they may have the physical treatments. And they may have the physical treatments for, like a series of time. And then we might work with more vibrational medicine, so much finer energetic medicine. We might work with the Australian bush flower essences, or we might work with the vibrational touch that I do, which is working directly in the energy field. And people might move backwards and forwards between those things. But what's wonderful about that is that they are beginning to see and to accept that they are all those things. And that if we're working in one plane, someone said, it's if you live in a house and that house has multiple rooms and each room represents a part of your nature at a different vibrational level, so your spirit, your emotions, your beliefs, your physical body, and so on, and you only visit one room and live in one room, how can you say you inhabit the house? Because to be fully lived in, you need to move through the house. You need the breeze coming through the house. You need the curtains blowing. You need energy moving. So, and that's the same when people don't visit themselves, that they've been thinking their way sometimes through their lives for years, and they have not accessed really how they deeply feel, let alone what they deeply believe in. And you're right.
That's a great metaphor, if you live in a house,
Well, it wasn't my metaphor. It was probably some saint. But
yeah. How many rooms are in your house, You got some 5 basic rooms, or what do you... What in your counseling? What are the things you touch?
Whatever's relevant to them.
Yeah.
Everyone is so utterly different and unique that they're going to be wanting to, a lot of people, first of all, they just want to dump and gush because they've got an undifferentiated ocean of feeling that is being held in. And so it's very difficult for them to communicate because they can't really reach in, pull out a feeling, see it clearly, name it, create a communication bridge to somebody else, using the naming and the recognition and the clarity, communicate to another person what it is that they are feeling. See, for some people, that's a real journey to go out of their head and into that feeling part of themselves and go, I know my behaviour to an observer looks like a behaviour that is defensive and prickly and attacking. But when I access what I deeply truly feel, I feel afraid, or I feel unworthy, or I feel whatever the set of emotions is. So it's about creating an environment where those things can occur for somebody. And you're quite right when you say, it's a process. It occurs over time in the same way as the creation of the imbalance and the creation of the pain occurred over time. And I had...
Well, it's just in these talks, we discover things because we can't really just mouth the words to ourselves or to the other, and then we just go back and forth. The back and forth part, somehow we reflect on each other, and somehow we each add a spark to the fire. And so then that's what we're doing right now. We're kind of learning to see things in ourselves that we hadn't seen before, and we're not capable by ourselves to just bring these things to the surface. And the other thing I wanted to say was, well, they come and gush, you said.
Yeah, as an initial...
Yeah, but I just want to say, we don't know how to receive, and we don't know how to be received. And just to be received is like such a relief. And it sounds like when somebody starts to receive you, the tendency is to throw it all out, And this isn't a rare opportunity. I better just get, this person is actually receiving me, so let me find it all and get it out of here. And if we could learn in our own lives, in our own families, in our own relationships, how to receive the other, maybe we could learn to allow ourselves to be received. And then all these things would be... it wouldn't be a critical mass where it was about to explode, right?
Absolutely.
It would be manageable at all times.
And you know why? I really think that it's because the notion of control is so paramount. Losing control, the possibility that we might lose control, and the desperate consequences that might come if we do lose control.
Control over the others, but also self-control, right?
Self-control.
Because of our image.
And so
protecting our image.
That's right. And so what happens is that people go into an implosion model. Now, and then little explosions will happen, and those explosions can be, domestic violence. They can be rage. They can be words that you wish you could call back, but that you are already up and out. They can be manifest in lots of different ways, and they can be bubbles that are coming up from this implosion that's going on. And the difficulty with implosion is that it is a stagnating and static energy form, and you've got to be hypervigilant 24 hours a day in case anything escapes. It's a full-time job. And so when people...
Say more about implosion. Are you meaning like dampening? Like you have to put the brakes on everything because you're out of control, so then...
But often you don't know. Often you are reacting to things that might be 30 or 40 or 50 years in the making, that might have come down to you through generations. So say in the example of somebody who has grown up in a family where coming down through the generations is the belief system that it's appropriate for men to be angry, but that it's inappropriate for women to be angry, and that what women need to do is swallow that anger
and hold a grudge.
Well, of course it's going to come out because nothing's balanced. People are going to try to feel powerful in the ways that are available to them, given that they're coming from a shape which is a shape which is out of equilibrium.
Feel powerful is cool because then we've got a dynamic going on between everybody in our life, and then somebody has a strength and somebody has a weakness, and so then we're manipulating each other with we know their weaknesses and we know they're going to blow up at anything, but they're not really capable of holding a grudge, so then we're going to just kind of like always have a chip on our shoulder or something.
Well, I don't think we can really judge who's capable of holding a grudge and not.
Yeah.
There are grudges that I've seen come out.
They come out anyhow.
They have not, even the person who holds them.
Like in Yugoslavia, right?
Has not been aware of.
When they had the war, they had these grudges that are generations old, and it was enough to kill a lot of people, right?
Absolutely.
So then who would have thought? I actually lived in Italy at the time, and I knew some Croatians, and they said, we were all friends. We were students together. There was guys from Serbia, from here and there. We'd get together, sing songs on Saturday, and we had guitars, and and then all this stuff started happening. We couldn't believe it. It came out of nowhere. We didn't know how that could possibly happen.
No, that's right. Because we don't have full access to ourselves, in order to go into all of those rooms of the house, see where the dust has gathered, see what's behind the door, see where the cobwebs are, and begin to do the process of cleaning. Because part of that, it comes down to us as our cultural and our family and our genetic inheritance. We inherit trauma at a personal level, at a family level, and therefore at a broad social and cultural level,
right?
Because we don't have access to the processes that will help to debrief that. And we tend to act in our lives. Some people, there's really interesting research, even just, for instance, with the post-traumatic stress disorders that are evident in the children of people who have, for instance, Holocaust survivors, who have never spoken. These Holocaust survivors themselves have never spoken once to their children about the trauma that they've suffered. But is it in them? You bet it's in them. Have they handed on a pattern of genetic inheritance to their children, which includes, brown eyes, dark hair, whatever? They've also handed on the emotional package,
hidden aggression,
the way of looking at the world, the belief system about self-worth, and so on. And but it's at the individual level that we have to do the work in order for all of those other broader levels to shift and change.
So it's us that has to look. I just had this question that popped up, what about Australia? Because here we're only 200 years old. You guys are only but I mean, in other words, are you carrying...
We white guys are only 200 years old.
Yeah. Are you guys carrying trauma from Lithuania and from all over the world?
Absolutely. Yeah. My background is Lithuanian, but this year, in October, I taught a workshop, because I do workshops as well, and varying subjects. But the workshop that we did in Italy, just north of Rome, I did with a Polish woman whose name is Małgosia Vulkanis. Now, she doesn't even speak English. She doesn't speak English. But what a healer. Like, what a developed method she has facilitated over time to release trauma. Now, she was a structural engineer. And for 6 years, she kept getting these messages, of being interested in energy and clearing energy and releasing energy and so on. And so because she was stuck in her intellect, for 6 years she turned it into a very interesting sort of post-doctoral examination of ancient Indian art forms and forms and medicine forms and so on. So she kind of turned it into an intellectual preoccupation. And she finally got the message, no, you just don't get it. You are supposed to move through the world doing this stuff. So it took quite a long time, 16 years, from the time she first got the message to us in Italy teaching this workshop. And but she's a very scientific thinker, really, like her very precise, and the transformations that occurred. So essentially what she does, without going into it too much because it's a bit complex, is she lends her clairvoyance to the person so that they can see beyond what they normally can see. And standing around them in a field, if you like, where you are using a capacity to see which is way beyond your physical eyes, you see someone, and it is somebody that you can trace down the strands of your family, your mother's side or your father's side. And you can identify, and some people can see more clearly, some people get lost in the, am I doing this right, and it's very difficult for them to get into it. We all respond differently. But when everything's calm and clear and we're just in our core, we see a person, and then we begin to know some things about that person. And you might go, it's a woman, but it's my father's side. It's my father's side. It's my father's grandmother. That's who it is. Now, when you do that, what that allows you to do is you have been the receptacle down through these strands that get woven into your DNA spindles. I mean, they are part of your genetic inheritance. Say it's a Lithuanian or say it's Polish, you've got a history of, Russians coming one way, Germans coming the other way. Just my father saw his father shot in front of him, saw his uncle shot in front of him. The traumas that have entered the physical bodies, the emotional, mental, spiritual bodies of people. So, but what you can say as part of this process, and it's quite a developed process and there's dialogue that goes with it, but you address that person, having seen them and found the strand, you address that person and you give them respect and you give them empathy and understanding, but you recognize that this is not your pain. It's their pain. And it rightfully belongs with them, because you don't want it to keep moving down these strands of inheritance that then keep delivering traumatized individuals into the world. And so as part of that ceremonial, you sort of clean these strands going back to that person.
Going backwards, right?
Going backwards.
No, because let me say that this
and boy,
is
do you
totally,
feel different.
Yeah.
Let me tell you,
you
feel very different.
No, I've heard that. No, but this is fascinating. Okay, first of all, somebody lends their clairvoyance.
Yes.
And does it take a lot of a process for the person to know how to take it on?
No.
And to borrow it? Or?
There is no process. She simply walks into your energy field and she shares your energy field exactly the same as I do as a shiatsu therapist.
Totally amazing, because, how many clairvoyant people teach and say that you can develop your clairvoyance,
Absolutely. Of course you can.
Nobody just hands it over to you and says, here's the keys, take it for a spin, right?
No, but it's a merging of energy fields. And it's exactly the same. Any therapist does that. Any bodywork person who's working with an awareness of energy, when you've got somebody with the flat battery, so flat that they can't see the possibility of vitality or joy anymore, you have to lend them your plugged-in energy field so that they can feel the energy move.
No, it's clear with energy. It's clear. I guess I thought clairvoyance was something different than energy, or So then I was saying that was kind of amazing. It's
just that she's very developed. You see, it's a highly developed skill and faculty that she has. All of the people at that workshop have also that faculty, but they're not aware of it. Some of them, they haven't developed it, and they certainly haven't developed it to the degree that she has, to the point where they're using it every day in their work, and so they become very skilled at it. So she simply her energy field steps into their energy field, and they are and she just lends them. It's that sort of, lend me your ears, lend me your eyes, lend me your clip.
Okay. So then what I have to say is like, okay, a lot of times we tell a story or have a belief, and then we know the effect of that story or that belief. Sometimes it makes us more, oftentimes if we're taking on a belief, we feel it makes us more flexible and more open and more, less anxious and more calm and peaceful and more appropriate. And so then, even if it's a story and maybe not any more true than the story that limited us, because it's just another kind of mental concept that we're building, right?
Yeah.
And so then one story that I had heard, is that as far as like generational trauma and family constellation,
Mm-hmm.
I heard that like we've been handed a series of problems, or we've been handed a contraction, and that we could actually solve this for our family, right? And we can obviously solve it for those that come later. But
if we solve it for ourselves,
almost like,
we solve it for our family. Absolutely.
Yeah, but it's kind of like that I was believing anyhow, and maybe it was just a nice belief, and it's a nice one too, that I was solving it for my parents too.
Yes,
and
you
that
are.
we used to say they'd be dancing in the streets up there, or wherever there is, or they would be released.
Yes.
They would be released from something. So then we're solving it.
Because
that sense,
everything's
we're
connected.
We're solving it for everybody, right?
Whether
but in a way, here's
this...
my question, like,
all right.
In a way, you were saying we could send it back,
Yes.
and say, hey, this is your pain, please take it back.
Yep.
And, someone even told me that I could hand something back to my father and he could take it, and be all right. And I thought, okay, that's cool. I handed it back, just thought it's not going to hurt you. And really wasn't hurting me, but I was thinking it was, I thought it was a heavy duty deal. So, but so then that's a variation on the story. I just wanted to get a clarity on that. Are you just sending it back and say no thanks, I don't want it, or are you some kind of sending it back that's somehow neutralized?
It's a different dimension. Well, what you are doing is, and most people, they would very consciously be saying, bind this to the light. You're sending something up into different dimensions where it is not delivering the pain that it's delivering to you, for instance, in the present. Your father or your grandfather or great-grandfather had all of their present moments that were available to them when they were encapsulated in this body, in this concrete, dense physical dimension, living their lives. Those present moments, they did what they could with.
Yeah, and so somehow they held on to it, all those present moments were not enough for them.
That's right, or they were overlaid with so much new trauma that it was a struggle just to cope and just to survive. Some people who have come out of those traumatic, broad social conditions are so utterly bewildered by their lives, how their lives have turned out, that it is all they can do just to keep moving through their lives. Because you can imagine the upheaval. You saw it yourself in Italy. 2 million traumatised people came out of ex-Yugoslavia. A lot of them to European countries. The streetscapes of Europe, of comfortable Western Europe, changed forever. You saw things in the street, behaviours in the street, drunkenness, trauma, that you had never seen before that war. And that was because there were common borders with Italy. It was so close to Europe. So, these... Sometimes
for my
these
father
are
and my
enormous
grandfather, there was really no coaching. There was no real wisdom. Maybe there was in isolated pockets, but there was not like today where it probably never crossed their mind that, hey, this is something I could let go, or I could send it back, or,
well, it's probably never crossed their mind that it was something that they could be holding on to, or let alone that they could explore.
They just thought it was them, right?
They were out bringing home the bacon, reciting the role that was available to a man in the world at that time, which was work, protect the family, support the family, control certain reins, control yourself, work within certain limits, live within certain parameters. You can only do the best that you can with the awareness that you have at the time. Now, that's what a forum, like a clinic or a workshop, is about. It is about creating the time and space coming together so that you can channel all of these higher knowings and learnings and finer vibrations into a moment in the dense concrete physical where people can have access to that greater awareness, and they can go, whoa. Just tell you a story about that. I do a workshop called Know Your Energy. Myself and a colleague, we run it. And it's about just helping people to understand that we are energy beings, that we have all these different layers and levels, and that disease often starts in the very fine levels and takes 30 years before it manifests in our, in our physical body. And there was a wonderful woman, and we keep them small because we want them to be, it's not me knowing, them not knowing. It's me creating a forum so that they can experience. It's very different. It's not about transfer of information to an audience. It's different. And the woman was there, and she was just looking shell shocked. And we'd just broken for morning tea, and we'd talked about the chakras, the meridians, the etheric body, the aura. Just introducing these three major concepts of us as energy beings. And she was just sitting there, just going. And I said, "You're looking a bit shell-shocked. What's going on?" And she said, "I am 60 years old. I have lived my life. I have never heard of any of this stuff. And it's only morning tea time." She said, what else is there in this day? I mean, it's a one-day workshop. And I said to her, "You are here because you're meant to be here with this group of people. You're meant to hear this stuff." So at the moment, you're just a bit shell-shocked because it seems a bit bigger than you expected. I don't know what you were expecting, but it was obviously something that was, kind of more close to what you already knew. But that's not what learning is about. You mentioned before, that we disassemble ourselves in order to reassemble ourselves in the new shape, in the new pattern, at the new vibration, with the new learning. Not always a comfortable process.
Yeah, it depends on if you've tried it before. So many people have never tried it in those 60 years.
And whether
right?
you embrace change, or whether your resistance is to change, or whether you are fearful of change, or that's personality.
Somebody that's never tried it, of
well.
course, is fearful. They've never tried it. They don't have a clue of what's going to happen.
It's not always fearful. Some people are very open to change, very flexible. They haven't acquired the brittleness that others among us have acquired about treating new things with suspicion or distaste or with fear. That's a learned thing.
Well, wait a minute now. I don't know, because how would they have not gone into new things before if they didn't have suspicion? I mean, that's the only reason that you could be in a fixed state, is that you had suspicion and fear, right? Or otherwise you would have been changing day by day.
It's about where you feel safe, I think. If you've had a lifetime of being told, don't do that, you'll hurt yourself. Don't do that, boys don't do that. Don't do that, girls don't do that. Don't do that, you'll fall over. Don't do that, you'll kill yourself. Don't do that. If your life is shaped with that, everywhere apart from where you are at this very moment is fearful or there's danger there, why would you run to the end of that veranda, leap off down onto the ground, do a tumble and a roll? Why would you do it? You see, your natural inclination is to explore. Our natural inclination is to explore, to expand, to connect, to be joyful, to move freely, to think freely. To connect is very important, but a lot of that is just overlaid with a kind of, just known in the trade as goobies. A lot of what we do is just helping people to remove goobies. It's like the windows have become smeared. When you have a good treatment, a good energy treatment, or a good workshop, a really good experience, When you went into that experience, you thought you were looking at the world through the windows and that the windows were perfectly adequate to show you what that world contains.
Mm-hmm.
You have a really good energetic experience, and it's as though somebody came in and cleaned the windows, and you go, I'm standing in the same place in the kitchen, I'm looking at the same view from the same window, but the window has been cleaned, and the entire world looks different. It's just so different, and it's just so glorious. And so what happens as you continue that process of cleansing and clearing, the world looks more and more and more beautiful and different and clear. And that's why I say this land sings, you know, this light is just diamond like. It's the laying of those new patterns, and those patterns are the cleansing, clearing, opening patterns, as opposed to the fear-based, closing down, resisting, creating obstacle patterns.
Yeah, I don't know. That's so important when you say it like that. It's just you realize that there's no possible way you can see a dirty window until you see through a clean one. And there's no possible way. So then you almost could say that I'm going to dedicate 1 week a year to some kind of window cleaning, just experiment around and see where, just so I know my footing, know where I'm grounded. And
that's what happens with a good therapist. That's what happens when they lend you their clean window.
You know, I mean, like even like, okay, you do workshops and stuff that are not for sickness, you know, really not for sickness, right? So in other words, so many times we just go to a therapist because we feel under the weather, or really, you know, we've been feeling bad for a couple of years, but, you know, tune-up sessions or something like that.
Yeah.
Something like,
but that's the
just
level.
Going for your annual maintenance, right?
But that's the level.
The dentists do it, right?
That's the level that people come to various things at. They have an awareness of something that's not functioning well. They're working on what is, you know, they're sitting in the negative. They're working on what is causing pain in their body, what's causing distress in their life.
They don't even know it.
It's a process.
That's a dirty window that they don't even know exists.
Well, they don't, but see, that's my job. My job is to find the words so that they can have an understanding of what it might be like to be in a different state of mind, to look through those clean windows. So then they just leave the clinic and they go, oh, clean the windows, you know, and they might use that for the next 20 years to say, look, it's okay, darling, I'm stepping out to clean the windows, you know, I'm going for a weekend retreat, or I'm doing this, or I'm sorry, it doesn't matter how many bills there are to pay, I am going every fortnight to that therapy session because, whether that's body work or whatever, because it's important. It's not just something at the bottom of the list. It's I move it to the top of the list. It becomes a priority.
The way we build our list, you know,
absolutely, it's our value system in action.
We do what we need, right? And then you say, well, we don't need it, and then somehow we've got to get transformed to do what we don't need.
Well, that's why I said that the idea of needing to me is a deficient idea. The idea of wanting is the precondition for, and I don't mean wanting in a grabby way, you know, material possessions. I mean having a very clear notion, I want this in my life now.
Well, we don't even know what this is again, you know.
But it's
and
a
then we
process
just
of
say,
uncovering.
don't fix it if it ain't broke, right? So then we don't go and fiddle with stuff. And
sure.
Unless it really hurts, right?
I can only see so many people, and every therapist can only see so many people, and every workshop can only reach so many people.
Right.
But each individual transformation transforms the energy that is available in the world. Each drop being different, entering the ocean makes the ocean different, and that is fine.
Right. That's actually what I wanted to bring up, you know, right about now is a good time, is like, you know, how do you multiply your efforts? Of course, you do it through every patient, right, or every client, let's call them.
Yeah.
Or you could do it through training other therapists. You could multiply your effect, you know, when you get onto a technique that really is proven and really works miracles. Or, I don't know, is there a way to work with a city or a school or a group or you know, there's a way to work in a prison, you know. I mean, even if you change the lives of 7 or 8 people in a prison, maybe the prison feels it, right? What are the ways?
From Brubaker to the Buddhist nun who works in prisons all the time, there is even a very negative environment can be transformed by the step-by-step application of the belief that people are inherently good and beautiful, and that their journey is to the light, and that there are some very dark environments where access to that light has been severely restricted, that people have dug holes so deep for themselves that they can see a point of light, which if you were standing up on top at ground level, you would see the whole panorama, the whole horizon, and the whole firmament. You see it all. But when you dig the hole and you keep digging deeper,
you're lucky if you're looking up to see the point of light. Maybe they see absolutely no light.
Maybe.
But in another way, okay, like somebody was telling me a story how they worked in prisons, and they said, okay, we're going to do meditation, and in order to start it, we're going to do a visualization technique. It might be new to you, but let me explain what it is. And they said, are you kidding? It was a woman's prison, They said, that's all we ever do is visualize. We're always visualizing what it's like outside.
Yeah.
And so then they actually are experts.
Yep. That's right. But they may be using a filter, which is a filter of loss. I've worked in women's prisons, so I know a little bit about what you're talking about. But so that the visualization is the yearning from the inhabiting the loss, and that's a different state of being.
What did you say again? Inhabiting
a state of loss, so that if you see the world in terms of what you have lost, what is not available to you, then that requires a really big turnaround.
So you're just reinforcing that and
Absolutely.
and kind of beating yourself down, saying, I lost it, I blew it.
Indeed, and that's not to say that there are not some people, even in as restricted an environment as a prison, who have found ways to meditate, ways to visualize, ways to pass that time, however long that is, in very positive ways, really, really positive ways. Yeah, they can do. But it depends, how we're interpreting our lives. If our life is a gift, and if it's precious, and if we are self-motivated, if we think that we're powerful, dynamic agents, if we take responsibility for creation of our lives, creation of our illness, and therefore positive change in our lives and curing of our illness, then we become very powerful, very powerful. Often we don't know what's the path, what's the next step, how do I do this? I have some sort of deep instinct that this can be done, but I don't even know where to start. And that's where people whose business it is to define the steps for a person might make themselves useful.
Most people, I would have to say most people probably don't have any idea that anything can be done, because when you live in an aura of victimization, they did it to me. And
That's
so
right.
Then they're not here to pull me out or undo it, and then maybe some other will come and pull me out, because it's like you're a victim no matter whether it's for the positive or the negative.
Yeah.
And until you can somehow come out of that, and I don't know, maybe you can make a game out of it. You could just say, we know there's a lot of circumstances around your situation, and there's a lot of forces that really can, in a way, it looks like they conspired. But, that's not a very powerful place, so we're going to play a game. It's kind of fake, but we're going to play it where, like, you take responsibility back, Because if you just tell people they're kind of like, create their own life, they say, oh, come on, no, I never would have created this, I know that they did it to me, right? And so then if you just maybe you could just make a game out of it, where you just say, okay, like, we're going to do an exercise where you take your responsibility back. So we're going to just say, for the heck of it, I know it's not true, but we're just going to say that you got here because, you wanted to see what it was like. And I don't know, something like that, you know what I mean?
But it's not a game, and it is true.
Yeah.
It is true. And people will remain in their negative states, in their blaming states, in their vengeful states, until their awareness shifts. Now, what's it going to take for that to occur?
They're going to have some experiential evidence, right?
No, they're going to have a desire.
Yeah.
They're going to have a desire, and they're going to have to couple that desire with a belief. And sometimes that's where all the therapeutic intervention really intensively works, with helping somebody who has up until that point believed that life happens to them. They do not create it, it happens to them. Yeah. And a life consists of bad things that happen to them. But when you're introduced...
I dare say they all believe that. You know, all of them that are in that situation, and they might mouth the words, but they still believe it. And then when they say, when you say, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to forgive or something, they still believe that that they're a victim of circumstances, but then they're going to go through Jesus or something, and they're going to rise above the circumstances and forgive. But they still believe that the other's guilty, right? In other words, they don't really see it. They don't really have the experience that I can see how I create my life. They're going to...
And there are people who are not ready.
Yeah.
People come through the door, usually just once, of the clinic. And my first reaction is, you're not having my light. You are not having my light, not because my light is not available to the world, however my energy works, but because you have come through the door as a black hole looking for light. And you can't have mine. I will help you ignite your own, fan the flame, build it up, feel more secure with it, and I'll help you illuminate what's around you. But as long as you think it's my light that is going to make the difference to you and not your own, then, sorry, that healthy boundary just clunk.
It's like software. You could have an agreement, you know, check this box, I agree, you know, I'm only here to develop my own light, right?
And those people, those people,
Sign
because
here.
They're not there for what I offer, which is, you know, the healing that takes place, the transformation that can take place when there's a fully engaged process going on, and that includes honesty and responsibility and working with an open heart, a compassionate heart. So, and that means blaming, you know, grievance, vengeance, those sorts of things. Eventually, and it's a process, it doesn't happen straight away, but those things are traded in for things that serve you better and that serve the world much better. You know, you can... I've said to a client, because I'm not here to... Every moment's precious and every client is precious, and sometimes to hear what you don't want to hear is much more valuable than to be reinforced in what you do want to hear. And I've said to a client, you know, just think about whether you actually want to be well. Because just the way we're playing this at the moment, you're digging the hole faster than anyone around you can manufacture fill to go into it. So you've either got to, if you're going to be well and want to be well, you've either got to use a smaller spade, you've got to shovel more slowly. You know, you've just got to stop and take
just
rests.
Make it real clear, huh?
You've got to stop and take rests.
Right.
But
those are really cool things to say.
Well, I'm not here not to say what I see. I'm here to say it. And to say it from a position where it's not an opinion, it's me working as a therapist, observing and trying to find pathways, communication pathways into people so that they can hear what will help to make them well. Now, does that mean I haven't got my own work to do? I don't think so. I mean, I've had, you know, a lot of people have come to therapy through the experiences of their own, you know, crashes and burns and, you know, train wrecks that they've left in their lives, and often through illness, that they haven't heard those messages, they haven't listened, they haven't, but eventually they do. And see, that person might go out of that clinic and they might go, oh, well, I'll find another therapist because, you know, that therapist doesn't get me, doesn't understand what's going on. But maybe the therapist won't play the game of what's going on. And see, therapeutically, I think there is a very big difference between sympathy and empathy. And empathy is an absolutely critical characteristic, quality for a good therapist to have. Sympathy, I'm much less sure about, because it just seems to me that when you sympathise with people who are already smelling the smell of burning flesh rising around them, you know, and they know their contract with the world has been violated in some way, but they don't know how, but they think they've got a contract, or their contract with people around them. Those people have never heard of the contract, but those people who are sitting right in front of you, they know that contract's been violated. They've been let down, and let down badly. They've been betrayed. You know, so if I sympathise with that, I'm just embedding those behaviours. But if I empathise with the state of awareness that sees the world like that, and I also know that there are other ways of seeing the world available, and that person ultimately is free to choose or not choose to see the world differently. Now, you might say, but there's such a host of factors impinging on them that all those factors contribute to the obstacle of blindness and lack of awareness. Yes, that's true. But in every negative environment, there are always just these extraordinary flowers that just grow up in terms of people's compassion and people's action. And it doesn't matter how difficult that environment is. You can use the environment as the reason why you didn't or couldn't do or be, or you can simply grow. Listen to your nature, move towards the light, help other people, do the job in front of you. Just do the work. So I'm not really convinced by that. So call me unsympathetic, but I've explained why sympathy is not so good.
Right.
Whereas, you know, empathy
So let me,
is real feeling.
I don't know if this is shifting gears, but let me just say, I think, I don't know whether it's just because of different kinds of news sources or internets or YouTubes, or somehow it seems like the world is getting more and more intense and like a rocket, you know. It's really getting intense.
Yep.
And that has a certain value, because then we can start to see our own intensities or see what doesn't work in our own life, because sometimes it takes an exaggeration, a clunk on the head to really see, oh God, I do that myself, you know. And we don't see that when everything's mild and seems to be in control, and our police forces and armies have everything, you know, real flat for us, and we can just go along unconsciously. And you know, so in a way it has a value, but in another way it's also risky, you know, because like nobody says what the world can take as far as stress, you know. And it seems like the monetary system has had a few real snaps, and if you kind of look into it, you might not really believe it. It's as strong as you used to believe it.
But every paradigm has its time. That is the same paradigm that we referred to much earlier, which was you go out, you work in the world, you recite certain roles, you live within certain boundaries and limits, you believe certain things, you hold up certain people as examples, you hold up institutions and your faith in the institutions as representing the best that the world can offer you. And it's not. It's breaking down because it needs to break down so that the new paradigm can come through. And so
how's that going to look? You know, I mean, it's
like
somewhat we don't
that have just been cleaned.
We don't know. Some windows have just been cleaned, right? But you know, those clean windows are going to allow us to see where the institutions are flawed, and how we can put a few little corrections in.
But how important is it to see that clearly?
Really important.
See, before that you could call it a trauma, because it's a crisis of confidence. On this side of that crisis of confidence, you know, you thought your home was solid, you thought the economy was solid, you thought the banks were solid, you thought CEOs were honest, hardworking. You know, you thought all of those things. You thought they earned
their money and stuff like that.
You thought your money was safe, whatever money there was, and it's really good to see clearly that is not how it was. That we were actually working with illusion there.
Yeah, let me just pause a second, because like you said, the crisis of confidence, and that's so beautiful, because like confidence is like leverage, you know, and leverage means it's a multiplier effect. And so then you think that something that took 1,000 years to build will take 900 years to unbuild. But really, the leverage of confidence could just reverse in a fortnight.
Yeah.
And then leverage just means that, without confidence, none of it really has any substance.
But it depends how you're interpreting your world. You see, if you interpret knowing what you now know to be true and understanding that what you thought was true wasn't and isn't, if you interpret that as a negative, then of course you'll see the world in crisis. But if you interpret it as a necessary breakdown of that which is no longer relevant in order to make way for, as part of the most natural progression in the world, the new thing that is going to be born, that's going to grow, all new life comes out of death. It is the law. It is the law. Everything is dust.
I think a lot of people agree to that, and a lot of people will say that. But, where my worry comes in is like so many people say that it's a process that we can't really be too involved in. That the crash is beyond our control or even predictability. We don't even know when it's going to happen. And that the transformation is something beyond us too.
That's why you don't that's why you work with what is here now in front of you. You work with the people immediately around you. You work with the environment immediately around you. You do the job that your life path has shown you is the job for you. You do what you can do. You don't spend time not doing what you can't do. That's...
Say that again, because you're not doing what you can't do. You don't spend any time with that, right? You're not doing what you can't do.
But see, if you spend time feeling powerless because it's all so big and it's all so traumatic and it's going to crash in front of your eyes and so on, you are spending time in negativity. You're spending when every moment was available to you.
No, I get it. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that, and I'm not seeing other people do that.
When I say you,
either.
I mean one.
No, I'm not. I don't see other people doing that either. But what they're doing is they're saying.
I see people paralyzed, absolutely paralyzed by it.
No, they're not. They're not even paralyzed. They're numb, so they don't even know they're paralyzed. And what they're saying is it'll have to crash before it can transform, and that's it. They're going to just wait. And then, if anything, if they're proactive, they'll put some food in their basement or something like that. But I'm saying that's not enough, because we should be putting our finger in the dike and trying to transform it too, and we should be coaching people,
As we transform ourselves, it becomes transformed.
People. Yeah. People say that, see, and then they just go into all total work on their self. And then they actually, in order to work on themselves, this is what I see in my field anyhow, they kind of close the blinders down and down and down. And, actually they say that we're going open and open and open because we're vast now and there's no thoughts, right? Mm-hmm. But anyhow, in a way, it's blinders as far as the world of agreement, like society. They just ignore society totally and they take their attention right away from it. They deprive the world of their attention. And then that way they're a non-participant.
You can choose to do that. You could choose to do that. But most people I know are working in intensively practical ways to deliver positive, moving energy to the process of transformation.
That's why I'm talking to you. That's why I'm talking to you, because that's where I'm at. Like I say, let's go for it. And even if we fail at the edge of the precipice, that's the game, to go for it.
But to use the notion of fail or success is do you remember the bumper stickers that used to be around? Subvert the dominant paradigm. If somebody could just print those up again. And we could all just use them. Success or failure is a positive, negative. That it's good to succeed. Sometimes, when things come disguised as problems, even intractable problems, they can be gifts. And anyone who's ever had a really transforming experience through illness, through loss, through the breakdown of what they thought was solid in their lives, and has come through that experience, understanding impermanence, And
See, in
the
one way, that
everything.
coaching is very relevant and very, it's very empowering, because if I can see my own uh, dissolution is somehow actually my
You're becoming.
my becoming.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
wonderful. But what's going to happen if you look at it is like I'm not going to. My dissolution is not going to be that strong because I live in some kind of a favored. I've fixed it so that I'm totally a favored being, And those ones that are going to really feel the brunt of it are, for me, the other, right? And I don't feel like just saying it's okay, because it's okay for
But
me,
they're not
but it's
the
not
other.
okay for them.
But they're not the other.
For me, it's not okay just to put that off and say, well, look, a lot of people got their homes foreclosed on. I didn't, so then
Is
that's
there
okay.
distress?
They're
Yes.
learning from that. I don't want to say that about the other people.
Is there distress? Yes. Is there suffering? Yes. Is there yin? Yes. Is there yang? Yes. Is there everything and its opposite, all in constant motion around each other? Yes, there is. But people chose to live in suffering before the Industrial Revolution, after the Industrial Revolution, post the global financial crisis, pre the global financial crisis. These were choices that were being made at various levels of
to live in
people's
suffering.
beings. Yes, to
So
live
it doesn't
in
matter,
suffering.
huh? They could suffer anywhere, right?
They do. They suffer anywhere until they decide that they are not going to suffer any longer.
Yeah.
And that's independent of their external circumstances, because we all know people who have lost their entire family in a desperate car crash or some unspeakable tragedy, who emerge out of that with this incredible love of life and valuing people and valuing every moment and seeing how precious everything is. And we see people who stubbed their toe one day
forever, huh?
and the world did it to them,
Yeah.
and they are going to sue the council, and they're going to, because the world owes them.
I'm happy with testimony that says I had great losses, and it's really changed my life, right? And I was close to death myself, or I died already, and then it's changed me totally. And I love that testimony, but I don't like to say it about others in the third person. Somehow it doesn't feel right. Okay, I'll just share what I'm doing, like in my work, because
Sure.
I used to facilitate people working on individuals, and just talking about consciousness and talking about conscious practices, and now I'm more inclined to kind of work on collective numbness and expose it, put it on the table and just say, is this something that
Well, that's
is
why
affecting you?
one of your tools is the internet. That's
Yeah.
why. We all choose the tools that are appropriate to the work that comes to us with clarity to be done. And if we didn't develop and change in a developing, changing environment and pick up new tools and move into new spheres of influence, there'd be something wrong, because we're all permanently and impermanently in the process of becoming. You see, so, but I think what I understand, I think something of what you're saying is, and that is that people can take refuge in the intellectualizing of a lot of these concepts. I'm really practical. There's an ocean of need out there. I just deal with my drop. I do what I can. I help others to open their hearts if they are ready to do that, and then they help others, and the ripples just move through. We just do what's in front of us.
Uh-huh.
I try not to intellectualize the process
I see.
too much. I try and actually bring the intellect and the spirit so that they are, congruent.
Yeah, I try not to separate them, actually. I
Yeah.
try to put them together, because every thought has a feeling with it. And so let's just experience both of it. And I suppose if I'm working on collective numbness and exposing it, then people that become that, one modicum of less numb, they might say, oh, maybe I ought to go see Julia.
Maybe I ought to go to Australia to see Julia, or wait until there's a workshop in Italy, and then I'll use it as an excuse to go to Italy. What a great idea. And then they're animated.
Right. So then numbness, I think if you don't see directly, then you can see that you would like to see. And so then
Some of that numbness is exhaustion. It's mental, physical emotional exhaustion.
No, wait a minute. Numbness is exhausting.
Some of that numbness
but
is
I don't know if
exhaustion.
it's exhaustion, because we're exhausted from holding it up, holding the wall up, right? And we don't even know it's there or what it is or how it's made, but somehow we know we're running from something. Some knowledge is going to pop out of the box, and we don't. That's the last thing we want to see. And mostly it's mostly I think that lately that numbness is how many people in the world suffer and how heavy of a foot the Western world has. And as we walk around the world, we're just stomping on so many things, and we don't want to see that. We don't want to admit it, and we don't want to. And that's kind of things like I want to start to look at now.
You're speaking as an American. I can only speak as an Australian. You see, you're speaking from a political, cultural, historical background that is yours and that is not mine. You're also speaking from the point of view of somebody who has been receiving reaction to that historical, political, cultural
Well,
background.
in a way, you guys occupied this land, and there was an original occupant here, so we have that in common.
Absolutely, we do. Absolutely, we do.
We have that in common. We took it a little farther than you.
But
that's
it's been lovely to be less powerful. It's given us time.
Yeah.
It's given us time to focus on being powerful in these different ways. You see, it's not that we've got to be powerful by having an army of a certain size or by having an economy of a certain kind of velocity.
I can't wait in a way till we go broke, then we can't afford the army anymore. And then we'll just have to call the troops home, call the fleet home.
We can't, we're born where we're meant to be born and in the circumstances in which we're meant to be born this time round for whatever set of reasons. So I could absorb guilt or trauma or be apologetic about being born white. I could be resentful about being born female. I could be apologetic about or guilt-laden about being born in a developed Western country. Hello, let's just do the work. Let's just do the work that's in front of us. I mean, you cannot apologise for being what and who you are, but you can certainly take great care not to waste a moment developing everything that you've got.
That's so beautiful. So beautiful. I'm here to learn, really, because I believe that someone has to beta test something new, right? And it's got to have to be a smaller country, and a country that has some cohesion. And well, I don't know, doesn't necessarily need a tradition, right? That's kind of like an obstacle. So Australia is kind of perfect because there's a lot of people that came from a lot of different areas, and they're here for, we could say, for a purpose, but they're here to create a new world, really.
The last frontier.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that you say that, and that's one of the reasons that I do such a lot of work with the Australian bush flower essences, and why people, particularly in Italy, because I've got a very strong connection with Italy, are so receptive to them and so fascinated by them and interested because they are, white people have been here for 200 years with all of this incredible patchwork of influences and skills and traumas and cultural richness and everything else. But the original inhabitants, in some areas there's 60,000 years of history. And because we are an island continent, some of the Australian bushflower essences that we are using, and they work directly on the emotions, they work directly on the thought forms, because they're vibrational medicine. Ultimately, they express in the physical, but they're working directly on much, much finer layers and levels of our being. But they hold in them 60,000 years of knowledge and history, but also, because we are an island continent, many of them have remained botanically pure for at least 30,000 years. It's not like in Europe, where a flower essence in a country that has 5 other countries around it, and then 7 other countries beyond those borders, and constant traffic. It's a little bit different. They are enormously powerful, the bush flower
maybe they travel
essences.
with the wind, and they travel with the bees or whatever. But let me ask you this, because I don't know. flower essences, they probably,
They are
it comes
what's
to me that
needed
they
now.
work in consort with the land. They work in
They
consort
do,
with the
absolutely
continent.
they do.
So then when they're separated from the land, they probably know it, and then maybe they are different.
But are they separated from the land? Are they ever separated from the
I
land?
don't know. That's what I'm asking.
Do they go into a receptive environment, or do they go into a hostile environment? I think that any therapeutic approach, whether it's a substance or, a process, if it lands in hostile, infertile soil, is not going to thrive. Of course it's not. In fact, we're probably going to be put into prison for it. Do you know what I mean? Or burnt at the stake or whatever. But when it lands in receptive, fertile ground, of course it can thrive.
There you go.
Of course it can.
Julia, I don't know. Like together, I think we rock.
It's good to talk to you. Really good to talk to you.
Really
good to talk
like
to your
rocking
viewers,
and
of
rolling.
course.
We're really having
Yeah.
fun and really saying things that are of interest. And
Look, life is beautiful. It's precious, and boy, is it short. It is short.
Wow.
And it's nice to think that we can come round again and again and again.
Forget
but
that,
I love this one.
No, forget that. Just say that again. Life is short. At this time in my life,
And
I know that so much.
And we can be paralysed by a sense of panic at that, or we can stay calm and centred, and we can not waste a moment.
Well, panic is wasting a moment, right? Right away, once you realize that.
Because you're living in fear
panic
again.
for a second.
But you're living in fear.
You wouldn't even do that because you realize when you really realize life is short, why would you wreck this moment for anything that came from before?
Because of all of these patterns that have been laid down and that you've been conditioned into and that you've absorbed and developed and repeated. So any different way of looking at the world is just a new set of patterns. Now that could be Buddhism. It could be any kind of practice. It could be yoga. It could be 3 years of body work. It could be Chinese herbs. It could be 18 months of acupuncture. It could be moving to a different country. But any approach, it develops over time, and it is about identifying patterns that are unproductive for you and for you in the world, and then making conscious choices about replacing them with productive patterns that serve everyone's interests better. And then it's a process of repetition and reinforcement. That is learning. That is how learning occurs. And so people come and they go, they bring a product orientation. I want a package, I'm paying for a package, I want it now, and I want the results now. And you go, well, want away. Until we dissolve that little package that you've just brought through the door, you're not actually going to be able to enter your own process. Everything becomes over time.
I'd like to go another step, because like in a way we can identify destructive patterns or patterns that are looping, and then we say they're not really helping us. Maybe they did at one time, and so then we can get a more open-ended pattern.
Yep.
And somehow say, well, that's going to be more helpful. And then I think it's really a positive attitude is to realize that even that pattern's not going to be right. And that basically if we're total aliveness doesn't have any patterns. Or, patterns are overlaid on life. And life itself doesn't have a pattern. And if you think that identifying some kind of repetition in your life is helpful for you, then go ahead and do it. And then when you realize that it is no longer, don't say, well, I just made that up and now I'm going to unmake it. And then I may replace it with another pattern if I feel like I'm nervous, that I don't know where I'm going, or I need to know something, or I'm going to just live some minutes in unknowing and just see how that feels and see what the creativity of...
I agree. But to me, it's the difference between reacting and responding. When people are in their various layers and levels of distress and lack of calmness, lack of being centered, lack of clarity, lack of focus, they are very often reacting.
Mm-hmm.
And they're often reacting to subterranean motors that work on them very powerfully. And buttons are pushed and
I love
levers are
that one,
pulled.
subterranean motors.
Yes,
That's
because
beautiful.
they don't have conscious awareness of them, and that is also the process, the therapeutic process.
So anything unconscious is a pattern, right? Because otherwise...
Well, what I'm saying is that if you press my button or pull my lever in some way, then a deep motor starts to whir and I react. I don't sit there and choose the way I'm going to respond to that. I react. So for instance, in traditional Chinese medicine, a liver out of balance, which is the most common stress pattern that I see, is everything that could broadly fit under the umbrella of anger. So everything from impatience, irritability, reactivity, short fuse, exasperation, right through to absolutely full rage. Every incidence of road rage is an incidence of a liver energy out of balance. Now, all of those things are reactive.
Mm-hmm.
A liver in balance, which is so rarely seen these days, is patience, perspective, and vision. And how many people do we know who live their lives in patience and perspective and vision? And when you work on that imbalance, then you give yourself the opportunity to respond instead of to react. So people think they're arguing about the washing up. They're never arguing about the washing up. They're arguing about the betrayal of 3 years ago that's never been dealt with, and that's on top of what happened when they were 8, when Daddy left and never came back, and so on and so forth. So it's these layers of these subterranean motors. But when we do that work and we're able to sit in a calm place where we can formulate a response based on what is happening right here, right now. What is my considered response to the stimulus that has arrived, even if it's taxing to me now? And your response might be, I can't respond now. I need time to think about this. I'm going away to consider what has happened. But when you have my answer, it will be delivered calmly and it will drop into the void and you will hear what I say. Because it's not just me gibbering in the background in a repeating pattern of lamentation or reaction or irritation or the things that we do to each other all day, every day in our lives. It is me going, this is important, it needs consideration. I'm not going to, as a reaction, deliver a prefabricated, opinionated piece on this. I'm going to go away and I'm going to consider it, and some things take time. But when I speak, you will hear. You will hear. You know, and I mean, I defy a husband to stand against the incredible power that comes with that patience, perspective, and vision. And we can achieve that. We can all achieve that. Some of us spend a lot of time a long way away from that, but we can, you know, we can find our way home. We can do that.
So we're talking, you know, the way you speak of it, like a subterranean motor or a lever, you know, a lever. So then those things are machines. So then a machine is fixed. It only goes through what it's
That's what I'm talking about, behaviours, unproductive behaviours. They're circuits. And they're closed circuits.
So the fix means it's a pattern, right? So then that, you know, if it's something's fixed, if you see a fixed pattern, then that is a machine. And you can be sure that that's going to come out as a pattern. But I would even go another step in saying that even if we respond, it might look like it's a pattern because we're responding to a motor or a lever, and we're responding in the moment to something that is, you know, appropriate.
But in the moment, there is no button, there is no lever.
No, but some other button is being set off in front of us, and we have to respond to that. And
information's being delivered to us.
It might seem repetitive, but just know that, you know, responding, even if it looks repetitive, it's not. It's just appropriate. And so then that's where we're kind of heading, right?
We are, although I don't quite see it that way. What I see is, for instance, because we develop these loops and then we go round in these repeating loops, our behaviour becomes more and more automatic. Less and less conscious awareness goes into it. And you see those people. You do see those people where they just do all of the same patterns in their daily life, day after day after day. It might be the smoking of the cigarette, the drinking of the alcohol, the poker machines. That's a kind of imprisonment in repeated behaviours that have gone across to automatic pilot, where you are not negotiating your own life from any kind of fresh perspective. Now, when you build in a circuit breaker, so for instance, there is a bush flower essence, which the Crowea, there are many of them, but Crowea, for instance, is one of them. Now, Crowea comes up for the pattern of overthinking, for the worry loop, where you go round and round and round in your own head. You run the dialogue, you run it so often that you can't imagine that the other person hasn't heard it yet or doesn't know it yet. But you react to them as though they ought to know.
And they're ignoring you.
But there was no bridge made across to them. You've lost yourself in your loop. So the Crowea comes in, and the Crowea brings stillness and centering of that person. And what it does is it finds an exit. So you've got essentially you've got a no exit street. That's, you come back round and then you're in the same street again. You come back round and you just wear yourself into a deeper groove with it. And you've run the dialogue so many times you could tear your own head off your shoulders. And many people are locked in that pattern. They hear the dialogue. They do it so often. But what the Crowea does is it just functions like a little circuit breaker, and it goes, whoop, there is an exit available. And so it essentially interferes with the repetition of that energy by just dropping a new energy in. And that energy, that moment, is the availability of an exit. Now, when you then take the exit and you apply clarity and focus and vision and all of these qualities that are about manifesting, and you link it with positive outcomes, then you link it with will as well as vision, so willpower, and then you take practical steps to move down that road, then you get somewhere. You get somewhere and you leave that no exit alley behind you. Does it take time? Yes, it does. But those circuit breaking vibrational medicines are very valuable because they work below the level of conscious awareness. You don't have to be consciously aware of this process for them to work. However, when I do the vibrational medicine with people, the bush flower essences, they don't need to be there. They could be anywhere in the world. I just find their pattern, see what's there, get the information about what's needed to convert from unproductive to productive, and sort of the mosaic of their energy field. But then I really like to talk through with that person what came up for them in those drops. Now, most people use from 1 to 4 drops. I use heaps. It really is the mosaic: mind, body, spirit, karmic, genetic. It's, what's the portrait? But it's the talking about those drops that's very empowering to the person, because they recognize they don't have to write notes or remember anything. They just need to hear the words spoken and then consider what that might mean for them. And it's very empowering because it creates a bridge from their subconscious, where they know it all anyway, to their conscious, where they can formulate action as a response to these things. And that is the process of becoming well. You see?
Completely fascinating.
It's simple.
Wow, Julia.
It's simple.
There's so much to try. that's just great because it's not like doing it for you, but it's
No, I
not.
can't do it for anybody.
Yeah,
I can't know what they don't know.
but somehow it makes the little peephole where you can just sneak out and be self-empowered.
People say to me, they say, how do you know this stuff about me? Like it's really creepy for them. And I go, I only know it because you know it, and I just found your field, which contains your knowledge and your awareness and your life story, and I just simply made it a bit more dense and concrete so it could be absorbed while you're sitting in the chair and we're talking about it. That's all. It's not
So like a reflection.
Well, it's exactly all I've done is just find the language to communicate what you already know, but that you don't visit those rooms of the house often enough. And people say, yeah, but how? And I go, well, okay, look. Remember in the days before we had FM radio and everyone had an AM radio? And I go, yeah. And I go, okay, well, if you had an AM radio or even a shortwave radio and an FM radio was available, but you didn't know about it, you wouldn't believe that all those stations were there. That you could listen with this incredible clarity to this beautiful music that's coming out of a different wave band. You'd think AM radio is all there is. And that's what a lot of people think. They think AM radio is all there is. I'm an AM tuner. You're an AM tuner, and everything's operating at that frequency. But it's not true. You just get yourself a finer tuning and you spend more time in it. So you just like
we
your
we don't
FM.
really know what humanity is at all, right?
No.
I mean, in other words, like we've got up to FM, we've got up to CDs,
And
we've got
that's
up
what's
to
happening.
streaming internet, but we still don't know. There's no end to it, right?
And that's why it has to break down, because all this dense, concrete, physical stuff is coming into great tension because the vibration is changing. And we've got to, even FM's not enough anymore. We've got to go to the next thing and the next thing, because we are all in the process of becoming. The entire universe is in the process of manifesting. So it's not a tragedy. It's not a tragedy. It's a necessary clearing. And for some of us, our job is to help people simply negotiate that necessary clearing. First of all, the dross out of their own lives, so that they can be unafraid and just simply realise their purpose.
Maybe we're here to celebrate the new, and then we're helping other people so we can have a bigger party, right?
Well, we're helping other people because that's what gives the meaning.
Yeah.
That really is what gives the meaning, and that doesn't depend on material wealth at all.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that sounds saintly. It's a really very practical thing. When I developed my business model, when I thought, okay, because I was a television director for 15 years, and
wow.
I was... I didn't
now
tell you.
I'm getting worried. Am I doing all right? Yeah, you should have told me that a while ago.
I deliberately didn't say anything. And then I was a university lecturer for 10 years. And now I do this because I want to do this. I love to do the work that I do. I really love it. And it's not saintly. When I was working out at what I would do next and, getting the messages and interpreting the messages about how it would be, my aim, if you think of it in terms of, the business plan, was to create a good life for myself and a better life for other people. I still came first, because if I'm not okay as a therapist, how am I going to be an adequate therapist and help people? If I'm not okay as a teacher, how am I going to teach people in a way that engages them? So I have got to be okay. It's the song of every mother who thinks that she has to hollow herself out to service the needs of everyone around her, and she does not get it, that if she is not okay, they cannot be okay. She has to come first, and it's not selfishness. The world is not so interested in sacrifice as we think.
As we think, right? I don't know, Julia, I really thank you. I'm going to move to close, because if I start going into TV and stuff, I'm never going to finish. I'm going to need a session.
Yeah, but see, it nearly killed me.
Yeah.
You get a lot of recognition from the popular culture. You know, it's considered to be a great job, and it nearly killed me.
Oh boy.
You know, and it consumes people, and you have to
Yeah.
make value judgments about what is good for you and what's not, what's productive and what's not, what's serving a greater need and what's not. And I loved every moment of it until just before it nearly killed me.
Oh yeah. Hey, you guys out there, you know, I'm not nearly dead, you know, don't worry about me. I'm not going to go that route.
No, we see you do it calmly. I did it in an enormous national broadcaster,
Oh
you
boy,
know, a
oh
very
boy.
big
Don't
organisation.
tell me I'll get envious. Julia Kalytis. Everybody, we welcomed her. She celebrated with us, and she told us a million things that we can follow up on, and can change our lives. And maybe it already has just by considering it. And it's all coming here from what they call down under, but really I think this is kind of like the center of the world or something, but I don't know. I'll tell you later. So thank you so much, Julia.
Thank you very
I really
much.
love speaking with you.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. It really has.